defrauding the elderly, recruiting people to weird sex cults, and a little murder. Celebrities don't always have to serve time for their crimes, but here are a few who are now spending their time in prison. Musician C. Murder was sentenced to life in prison for killing a teenager during a scuffle in 2002. According to the Associated Press, C. Murder, aka Corey Miller, got into a fight with a 16-year-old fan named Steve Thomas outside a club in Harvey, Louisiana. MTV News reports that a jury ruled that Miller shot Thomas as he laid on his back while being beaten by the rapper's friends. Following a civil case in 2013, C. Murder was also ordered to pay the victim's family more than $1.1 million. C. Murder has consistently proclaimed his innocence. In January 2018, his publicist, Tammy Ty Page, told All Hip Hop that they knew of a prisoner in another jail who confessed to Thomas's murder on tape, and even signed an affidavit attesting to it. Page also told the site that C. Murder was engaged in a hunger strike to bring awareness to his claim that he and other prisoners were being denied proper health care. According to Louisiana Weekly, C. Murder's defense team has sought a new trial based on recanted testimony from 2 witnesses who identified him as the shooter in his original trial. He was denied the retrial in 2019. Oscar Pistorius became one of the world's most renowned athletes when he sprinted in the 2012 Summer Olympics in London as a double amputee, but he made headlines of another sort the following year. In the early hours of February 14, 2013, he reportedly fired 4 shots into a closed bathroom door, killing girlfriend Riva Steenkamp. Pistorius said he thought an intruder was in his home. The prosecution claimed he killed Steenkamp after an argument. CNN reported that Pistorius was convicted of manslaughter in 2014 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He served 1 year and was then put on a lenient house arrest.
Part of his conditions of holding here is that he will be able to leave this home to go to church and to work, and his work is track and field.
Later, his conviction was overturned and upgraded to murder by a higher court in 2015. In November 2017, his sentence was increased to 13 years and 5 months by the Supreme Court of Appeal. In March 2018, Pistorius ran out of appeals. In July 2019, Texas rapper Tamor Trayvon McIntyre, aka Tay-K 47, was found guilty for his involvement in the botched robbery and resulting murder of 21-year-old Ethan Walker. According to the Star-Telegram, McIntyre was originally accused of the crime in 2016 at age 16, and after being certified to stand trial as an adult, he was granted a bond and placed on house arrest. A couple of months later, he cut off his ankle monitor and fled. While evading custody, McIntyre recorded a track called The Race, which was released on the same day he was arrested. The track went viral and eventually ended up charting on Billboard's Hot 100. During his life on the lam, McIntyre also allegedly participated in 2 additional violent robberies, one of which resulted in the murder of Mark Anthony Saldivar. McIntyre was brought to court for another bond hearing in March 2018, during which District Judge Wayne Salvant denied the request for bond and admonished him for incriminating scenes in the race video.
We're seeing news about the song, seeing praise about the song, and seeing you literally dancing on Ethan's grave.
McIntyre was later sentenced to 55 years in prison. In November 2019, he was indicted for the April 2017 murder of Saldivar.
Hi guys. I know a lot of you probably have some really harsh and negative opinions towards me right now, and I understand why you do.
If you're not familiar with the world of YouTube, you may not know Austin Jones, who racked up more than 500,000 subscribers by doing a cappella covers of popular songs on the channel he launched in 2007. Since then, Jones has become one of the most controversial figures on the platform, and his behavior ultimately landed him a decade-long prison sentence. In 2015, Jones was accused of soliciting twerking videos from minors, according to the now-defunct music blog Pupfresh. These allegations eventually got him booted from his scheduled run on the Vans Warped Tour after over 9,000 people signed a petition calling for his removal. At the time, Jones did admit to soliciting twerking videos, but it wasn't until 2 years later that the star was arrested at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport on the felony of 2 counts of producing child pornography after a search warrant was issued at his home. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, after Jones pleaded guilty in February 2019 and his YouTube account was swiftly removed, he received a 10-year sentence, which he began in June of that year. In 2007, Furious 5 member Kid Creole, real name Nathaniel Glover Jr., was one of the first rappers ever inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but that was long after the group disbanded in 1983. According to People, the star reportedly worked as a security guard in New York to get by, and in 2017 was charged with second-degree murder charges. Glover had allegedly stabbed a homeless man named John Jolly twice after he thought the man was either making a pass at him or planning to rob him. Glover reportedly fled from the scene, and Jolly later died from his injuries. Glover entered a plea of not guilty in August 2017. The following month, the New York Post reported that Glover's attorneys planned to, quote, present psychiatric evidence of mental disease or defect as part of the former rapper's defense. The judge wasn't swayed, and on April 6, 2022, Glover was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter. He received a sentence of 16 years in prison. Disgraced R&B singer R. Kelly faced multiple federal and state charges across several trials, including 10 counts of aggravated criminal abuse and child pornography charges, spanning across Illinois, New York, and Minnesota. Federal prosecutors have accused the star of everything from bribing a government official to marrying a 15-year-old Aaliyah to racketeering.
Are you blaming this on social media?
I'm talking about the power of social media.
Kelly, who has maintained his innocence, was denied bail in 2019, according to BBC News. Variety reports that the singer was initially held in a special housing unit for at-risk prisoners, which his attorney argued was cruel and unusual punishment, though he reportedly was not in solitary confinement and could access indoor recreation. Per the Chicago Tribune, prosecutors claimed Kelly was the one who refused to go into the general population. Kelly's first criminal trial finished in September 2021, where he was found guilty on 9 counts of sex trafficking and racketeering in New York. In 2022, he was convicted in Chicago federal court for child pornography and enticing a minor. His consecutive sentences mean that the singer will be in prison for 31 years altogether.
Physically, War Machine, he could be a problem for anybody. But I'll tell you, mentally, he's definitely got some issues.
Jonathan Paul Koppenhaver, the ex-MMA fighter who legally changed his name to War Machine, was sentenced to 36 years to life for the brutal 2014 assault of his ex-girlfriend, adult entertainer Christy Mack, and her male friend Corey Thomas. According to CBS Sports, the former fighter avoided conviction on attempted murder charges, but was found guilty of 29 charges for kidnapping, battery, and sexual assault. Mack was left with a punctured lung and several broken bones after suffering nearly a year of abuse. At his June 2017 sentencing, Koppenhaver expressed remorse for his crimes and claimed to have found God while in prison, saying, "Not a day goes by that I don't seriously regret all those things that I did. I was a very, very lost, very empty person. Something's not right with my head." Mack also spoke at the sentencing, but didn't believe Koppenhaver had changed, telling the judge, "I do know when he gets out, he will kill me." Koppenhaver will be eligible for parole when he is 71 years old, but TMZ reported that Koppenhaver surprisingly found love again from behind bars, getting engaged to pen pal turned fiancé Ashley Farrington in July 2018. Joseph Sun is most famous for his role in Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery as the character Random Task. In real life, however, Sun's activities were no laughing matter. In 2011, he was convicted of participating in the gang rape and torture of a woman that he and an accomplice reportedly kidnapped and assaulted on Christmas Eve in 1990. According to the Daily Beast, DNA evidence from an unrelated case in 2008 linked Sun to the heinous crime, for which he was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. The victim was understandably shocked.
I had his movie sitting on my rack. I thought, are you serious? He's in my home.
1 month after starting his sentence, the former MMA fighter beat his cellmate to death. Prosecutors sought an additional life sentence for the murder, but the jury found Sun guilty of the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter. Upon handing down the additional sentence of 27 years, the judge brought up Sun's previous conviction, telling him that crime is as monstrous and despicable as anything this court has ever seen. Harvey Weinstein was one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood before a tidal wave of allegations brought his whole empire crashing down. In October 2017, more than 80 women accused the man behind Miramax of sexual assault or harassment going back years, which led to Weinstein being removed from his own company. His accusers include Rose McGowan, Mira Sorvino, and Salma Hayek, who revealed that he had threatened them and sabotaged their careers afterward. He was first formally arrested in May 2018 after a lengthy trial, during which Weinstein failed to garner sympathy through his frail appearance and use of a walker. The producer was sentenced to 23 years in prison for third-degree rape and committing a criminal sexual act in the first degree. But that wasn't the end of Weinstein's legal troubles. Law enforcement had him extradited to Los Angeles in 2021 so that he could face additional charges against another woman who alleged that he had assaulted her at a film festival in 2013, per AP News, telling the court, "Before that night, I was a very happy and confident woman. There is no prison sentence long enough to undo the damage." Despite pleading innocent, he was sentenced to an additional 16 years in prison. Weinstein is also still facing indecent assault charges in the UK. In 2020, Joe Exotic emerged as an outrageous personality on Netflix's documentary series Tiger King, which showed him promoting his Oklahoma exotic animal park and engaging in a bitter rivalry with animal rights activist Carole Baskin. But the big cat entertainer went too far when he tried to hire someone to murder his nemesis.
But I truly believe in karma. And a few people got some karma coming.
Exotic had been accused of animal cruelty repeatedly over the years. The entertainer was documented feeding his big cats by shooting horses that had been donated and buying expired Walmart meat that was also consumed by his employees. This brought him to Baskin's attention, and when she started campaigning against him, Exotic responded with bizarre online videos and public threats. In 2019, an FBI investigation revealed that he had attempted to pay someone to kill Baskin. Exotic ultimately received a sentence of 22 years in prison. Baskin later said in a video statement,
If he completes his sentence and is released, we will end up spending the rest of our lives constantly looking over our shoulders.
Despite his attempts to win a pardon from former President Donald Trump, Exotic remained in prison. In 2021, he was transferred to a federal medical facility to treat his recently diagnosed prostate cancer. And as of 2023, the unlikely celebrity is reportedly not receiving any more treatment for the cancer, which may have spread to his bladder, as he revealed in a letter published by TMZ. William Hayden became a familiar face on the Discovery Channel Sons of Guns, a reality show about his family-run weapon shop in Louisiana. The show was canceled in 2014 due to Hayden's arrest, and during his 2017 trial, an awful truth about Hayden came to light. As The Advocate reported, he was first arrested for raping a preteen girl in 2014 after his assistant contacted the police. This led to a trial where the now 15-year-old testified that he had preyed on her repeatedly, beginning when she was only 11. She was joined on the stand by a 37-year-old woman who alleged that she had also been a victim of child sexual abuse by Hayden over 2 decades earlier, at the age of 12. His oldest daughter, Stephanie, who had previously appeared with her father on Sons of Guns, later told Dr. Phil that he had sexually abused her as well, which led to another sex crime charge. At the end of his trial, Hayden was found guilty of aggravated rape and forcible rape. He was sentenced to 2 simultaneous life sentences, plus another 40 years in prison, ensuring that he would be spending the rest of his years in jail. He later received a 3rd life sentence in July 2017, which the assistant district attorney declared, "This conviction will satisfy our obligation to the public for public safety, to make sure that this defendant stays in jail for the rest of his life." Canadian rapper Tory Lanez torpedoed his budding career in July 2020 by shooting Megan Thee Stallion twice after they attended a party together. Megan later wrote about the incident for the New York Times, comparing it to other acts of violence against Black women in America, recalling that Lanez shot at her while she was walking away from his car. Megan also told GQ that he had offered her money to keep her mouth closed about the incident. Lanez denied shooting Megan and insisted that she was lying in order to hurt him, even mentioning the situation in his music. According to Megan's testimony in court, he also got other male rappers to believe him and slander her, recounting on the stand, "Every man in a position of power in the music industry has taken his side. Not a day goes by without being called a liar." But Lanez's defense didn't hold up in court. According to the New York Times, he was ultimately found guilty of 3 felony charges and sent to jail in December 2022: assault with a semi-automatic handgun, having a loaded and unregistered firearm in a vehicle, and gross negligence in discharging his firearm. Amy Locane became entangled with the law after a fatal drunk driving accident in 2010. Best known for the John Waters film Cry Baby and the soap Melrose Place, the actor was driving around Montgomery, New Jersey, when she hit a car turning into a driveway while speeding at 53 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour area. The passenger, 60-year-old mother of 2, Helene Seaman, died on the scene, and her husband Fred Seaman was airlifted to the hospital. According to NJ.com, she had already been involved in a minor collision earlier that night, and when the police took her in, Locane confessed that she had been drinking. Her blood alcohol level was tested and turned out to be almost 3 times over the legal limit. During her trial for second-degree vehicular homicide and third-degree assault by auto, her lawyers fought for a lighter sentence due to her young children, and she initially ended up serving only 3 years in prison. Helene's family insisted that the sentence had been too forgiving. The surviving victim argued in court, "My son is about to have a granddaughter, and my wife will never be able to hold her. This has to stop. People can't drink and drive." The law agreed with him. After a series of appeals, Locane received a new sentence of 8 years in 2020 and went back to jail for the second time. Smallville actor Allison Mack went to prison for her role in the sex cult NXIVM after it was revealed that she had been finding women and drawing them into the abusive group under the false impression that it was a female mentorship program. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Mack first met NXIVM founder Keith Raniere in 2006 and quickly rose through the ranks and recruited women to become sex slaves for Raniere. Mack reportedly blackmailed these women through nude photos, physically abused them, and branded the initials of her and Raniere onto them.
Imagine a hot laser dragged across your flesh for 30 minutes without anesthetic.
In an interview with the New York Times, she confessed that it was her idea to use branding rather than tattoos, saying, "People get drunk and tattooed on their ankle BFF or a tramp stamp. I have 2 tattoos, and they mean nothing." After an FBI investigation, Mack went on trial for racketeering charges in 2019. In a letter published by Variety before her sentencing, she called NXIVM the biggest mistake and greatest regret of my life. The judge ultimately sentenced her to 3 years in prison, explaining his reasoning in a memorandum. "While I accept your contrition as sincere and your efforts toward rehabilitation as genuine, it is impossible to ignore the tremendous injuries that you caused." Jen Shah became one of the most notorious women in the Real Housewives franchise when she was exposed for taking advantage of the elderly and defrauding them of their savings through a telemarketing scheme. The star of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City had garnered outrage before her trial by releasing Justice for Jen merchandise and creating a new tagline for her second season.
"The only thing I'm guilty of is being Shah-mazing."
These decisions looked tactless when the details of her scheme started coming out in court. The U.S. Attorney's Office formally accused Shah of conspiracy to commit fraud and money laundering through a ring that she was heavily involved with since 2012. In 2022, she pled guilty. Shah asked the judge for a reduced sentence in a letter published by CNN, arguing, "The terrible business decisions I made and professional relationships I developed stem from some personal painful experiences that I was going through in my life." The court eventually decided in January 2023 that she would spend 6.5 years in prison and pay over $6 million to her victims. She reported to prison in February 2023. The real estate mogul Todd Chrisley and his wife Julie Chrisley became famous on the USA Network show Chrisley Knows Best, where their family showed off their expensive lifestyle. As it turned out, the Chrisleys had actually been paying for their luxurious surroundings by committing fraud and conning banks into giving them loans. The reality stars were indicted over their tax evasion during the 7th season in August 2019, which led to a series of federal charges. As Insider reported, their accountant, Peter Tarantino, was also put on trial and ended up with a sentence of 3 years in prison for assisting them and faking tax returns. In November 2022, Todd and Julie found out their own respective fates. Todd would be in prison for 12 years and Julie for 7 years. An FBI spokesperson stated, "When you lie, cheat, and steal, justice is blind as to your fame, your fortune, and your position." After they received their sentences, their show was canceled, and so was their children's spinoff, Growing Up Chrisley. They reported to prison in January 2023 and are planning to appeal their case, according to People.